Welcome to the Neo. Welcome to the Neoliberal podcast and YouTube channel. Welcome to the Neoliberal Corporation. We're doing a series where we go throughout Philadelphia and various cities and showcase moments. Showcase moments where people are displaying their talent, sharing their story. And they may share their story by speaking with us. They may share their story by playing an instrument or demonstrating their talent. And we've featured Faith Adams or Evans or Faith Williams, I believe, playing her violin. And we've had various shows in terms of Street Vibes, What's Your Story, interviewing people at random, highlighting life happening, because the podcast is about life. We say that when you look at the description about the podcast, the Neoliberal podcast and the Neoliberal YouTube channel, I said that life is about people and how people relate. Life is about people and how people relate. We have said that. And I said that life is about people and how people relate. And we went on to say that, but life is also what you make it or you allow others to make of it for you. And I believe we have a responsibility to share life in all its glory and its splendor. And that's where about. But today on the podcast, I'm going to share. So it's a new series. The podcast is very dynamic. People ask, what's the podcast about or what's the channel about? We are not about anything. I'm a student of liberal arts, liberal studies. I am a student. I have done a lot of interdisciplinary studies. I promote. I am an eclectic person, and when I did my undergraduate, my research looked at an eclectic approach to dealing with mental issue, or an eclectic approach to dealing with issues. And of course, I went to a seminary and studied theology, but I studied theology. And I studied psychology, counseling psychology. So I did a lot of counseling courses and psychological courses. One thing and we were just talking about this issue of an eclectic approach to counseling and so on. So I wrote a paper, my final paper. I did a research and I talked about, I looked at the biopsychosocial spiritual approach. The issue of the integrationist approach to psychology or to counseling, the integrationist approach to psychology or counseling, or I might say not just the integrationist approach, the eclectic approach. It is a result of, it came about in the 90s, I believe, or the 80s. People like J.E. Adams, but it came about as a result of the conflict or the debate amongst professionals who happen to be Christians. Okay? And the question is, can there be a marriage between psychology and theology? And by extension, the practice of counseling utilizing psychology or psychological methods, as against the practice of counseling utilizing theological method within a theological context. Or depending on the individual, the person. Of course, there are people like J. Adams who believe, and many people who are more orthodox mainline Christians who believe that all truth is God's truth. There's no other truth outside of that. So for them, the practice of theology must always be based on something theological, something spiritual, something. Okay, but in the 21st century, as we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and people, and with the application of critical thinking to academia and to theology and so on and so forth, of course, there is this need and this drive toward interdisciplinary studies, liberal arts. People are recognizing we are recognizing now the importance. The problem of society, the problem of man, is not just one thing. It's a complex thing, because life is complex. So to approaching issues in society requires a multifaceted approach. Okay, see, for example, we talk about in child, youth, and family services, or in adolescent psychology, looking at the children in the home or the children in their communities or in their families. When a child presents with a problem, you cannot just see the child and that one problem. You have to see the child in this community. So therefore, the way in which we approach problems as counselors or professional helpers, it has to be a multifaceted approach. Say, for example, in certain, and that's why many programs today, they're not as punitive, because they're recognizing that especially certain population are affected by poverty, they're affected by mental and psychological issues, parental issues, and so on, and the problem of growing up. And so therefore, so they have learned from the eclectic approach. Liberals and Christians and professionals were always debating about whether or not you can whether or not there can be a marriage between between psychology and Christianity, or Christianity and theology, whether or not there can be a Christian counseling, okay? And of course, there's white people, and of course that is yesterday. Today, now, the way in which people treat with issues is now multifaceted, stemming from the debate about whether or not you can have a kind of approach to issues by marrying theology and psychology. But now that's yesterday's debate. Now people are now actually utilizing an eclectic approach towards dealing with the issue. Okay? And we can of course add the spiritual, and the spiritual is not necessarily Christian theology. It could be anything or inspirational. But I don't know how I get to be talking about this, because I'm talking about a new show that's about a new series that we're doing on the Neoliberal podcast. And we're carrying it on the Neoliberal YouTube channel, showcasing various peoples in community in Philadelphia, New Jersey, or wherever we are, showcasing various things. And of course, next week Thursday, we have Ken Good on the show. We're not moving away from talk about carrying political shows and academic programming. We just ended the lecture series. It won't come back around.
Welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal podcast. I'm Renaldo McKenzie,
continue to support us, continue to
producer and creator. This episode of the
and we are looking forward to something great, something big. I hope you catch the fever and catch the vibe. I'm Renaldo McKenzie of the Neoliberal podcast.